Okay, so let's get started.
Yeah, okay. Hello, teacher. Hello, everyone. I'm from Group 2, and now we're going to make a presentation about Chapter 3, Vocabulary. My name is Tiên, and I will work with Thùy Dung. In this chapter, we will present 6 items. I'm going to present to you the first 3 items, as you can see here, and Miss Dung will be in charge of the 3 last one. The first one, we need to understand what is vocabulary. To answer this question, learners usually understand that learning vocabulary means learning English word or the Chinese word. So the first question is, what is a word? To answer this question, there are some concepts to be considered. The first one is the tokens. The tokens are used to count the numbers of words in a sentence. For example, in this sentence, to be or not to be, this is the question. We can see that 10 tokens. Although to be and to be here the same, but we still count, so 10 tokens here. In the contrast, word types, you can see that to be and to be the same, so people just count one time. So here, talking about the word types, we only have 8 types. The next concept is word forms according to Nachi and his colleagues. Word forms are considered as belonging to the same word family. For example, here, active and activity are in the same word family. Please note that the derivational affixes such as non, honest, only is considered those words are in the same, which are in the same word family. The next concept is a lemma. A lemma is a set of related words that consists of the stem form and inflected forms that are the same part of the speech, and all the words are the same word form. For example, approach, approaches, approach, approaching. All these are considered verbs, are the members of the same lemma. So what vocabulary also depend on the purposes. If we are counting learners' receptive knowledge, the word family is the best unit for teaching and learning. If we are counting productive knowledge, as in speaking or writing, the word type or perhaps the lemma is the best units to be considered. The next concept is groups of words seem to be used like single words. The same mean or in another word, formulaic language. For example, good morning at the end of the day. Formulaic language as the phenomenon can be called in other names such as pre-formulated language, formulas, lexical phrases, formulaic sequences, or multi-word items. In the next part, I will talk about what vocabulary should be learned. To decide what vocabulary or what words should be learned, there are 2 major considerations here. The first is the needs of the learners, and the second is the usefulness of the vocabulary items. Let's talk about the frequency-based studies and why this study is so important in vocabulary learning. The first one, it is the cost-benefit approach to dealing with vocabulary. In this study, the vocabulary account for their frequencies and can use to distinguish words into 2 groups. The first one is high frequency words, and the second one is low frequency words. Of course, high frequency words are considered the first and the main vocabulary, and thus teachers and students should spend considerable time on studying and teaching this manageable group. In contrast, the low-frequency word group can be learned after high-frequency vocabulary. These words can be learned incidentally or deliberately, and there are some strategies to learn this group. Here you can see two groups of high-frequency words based on the needs of the learners. The first one is academic words, according to Costhead in 2000. This group is considered very useful for students who want to study into the academic field. And the second one is the technical vocabulary is specified for students in a specific field. For example, if a student study in English for medical purposes, they will need to study the terminology and the technical words relating to their field. And how should vocabulary be learned? There are many ways to learn vocabulary, but in this presentation, we would like to present the principles of 4 strands of vocabulary learning according to Paul Nation in 2007. The 4 strands include meaning-focused input through listening and reading, meaning-focused output through speaking and writing. The third one is deliberate vocabulary learning, and the final one is develop fluency with vocabulary across 4 skills. So let's get into details. For the first strand, learning vocabulary from meaning-focused input through listening and reading, learning incidentally through listening and reading. And there are 3 conditions to be met. The first one, the unknown vocabulary should make up only a very small proportion of the tokens, preferably around 2%. The second condition, there needs to be a very large quantity of input, preferably 1 million tokens or more per year. And the third condition, learning will be increased if there is more deliberate attention to the unknown vocabulary through the occurrence of the same vocabulary in the deliberate learning strand. And teachers should make learners aware of new words by glossing them. It means explain the vocabulary to the student by highlighting them in the text, and by encouraging students to use dictionaries to look for the meaning of the new words. And it is very important to integrate incidental and deliberate vocabulary learning approaches. Remember that incidental learning is cumulative. Vocabulary needs to be met a number of times to allow learning of each word become stronger and to enrich the knowledge of each word. Here are suggestions of sources of meaning-focused input. We can get the vocabulary or the words from graded readers, which are considered very useful for students at specific levels. And for the listening, the source of listening input can be used repeatedly. And the next strand, learning vocabulary from meaning-focused output through speaking and writing. And this enhancement of vocabulary through the productive skills can occur in several ways. You can get more information on page 40 and 41. Here are some activities. Annotated pictures or definitions can help to encourage use of new vocabulary. Teacher can organize speaking activities in groups to encourage students negotiate the meaning of the new word. And using partly known words to strengthen and enrich knowledge of the word. The next strand is deliberate vocabulary learning. In this strand, It is considered that noticing and giving attention to language learning generally makes that learning more effective. And deliberate learning is more focused and goal-directed than incidental learning. And there is also a set of learning guidelines illustrated through the use of word cards, and you can see more information in the book. There is a variety of forms for this for the principle of this strand. Teacher can use some activities to such as pre-teaching of vocabulary before a language use activity, dealing with vocabulary in a variety of ways during intensive reading, exercises that follow a listening or reading text, such as matching words and definitions, creating word families using word parts or semantic mapping, self-contained vocabulary like second-hand clothes, word detectives, collocation activities, and quickly dealing with words as they occur in a lesson. The final strand, developing fluency with vocabulary across 4 skills. In this strand, developing fluency involves learning to make the best use of what is already known. And conditions of fluency development. In summary, fluency development activities do not usually focus specifically on vocabulary learning or grammar, but aim at fluency in listening, speaking, reading, or writing. And there are 2 general approaches in this strand. The first one, the well-beaten path approach, and the second one, the richness approach. Okay, so the first approach relies primarily on repetition. Involves gaining repeated practice on the same material so that it can be performed fluently. Here are some activities. Repeating reading, the 4-3-2 technique. The 4-3-2 technique means that the students will try to produce the same speech in 4 minutes, then 3 minutes, and then 2 minutes. The faster speed can help to develop fluency. And the final activity, the best recording and rehearsed thoughts. And the second approach relies on making many connections and associations with a known item, and involves using the known item in a wide variety of contexts and situations. Some activities can be mentioned: speed reading practice, easy extensive reading, and continuous writing or retelling. So that's the end of my part. So now Ms. Dung will present to you for the next one.
Hold on a second. Okay. Yeah. Can you see the slide? Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hello everyone. So I will be in charge of the next 4 part. That is some strategy to develop learning vocabulary, to assess vocabulary knowledge, some limitation, and last but not least, if we still have time, I would like to introduce some hands-on activity. So first of all, the strategy development. So there are mainly 3 strategies to develop vocabulary. Those are to guess from the context, learning from the word cards or using word parts, and to use dictionary. So first of all is to guess from the context. This is one of the most useful strategy, and native speaker can gain information for up to 10% of the unknown words from the text after just reading it. This number seems pretty low, but imagine if you do it for over a year. The word that you can learn from guessing can be up to 1,000 words. But this skill requires the understanding of 95 to 98% of the token in the text. And it is a cumulative process. So it it needs a long time, and until the learner can make most successful guess. For the second learners, learning from guessing is a part of meaning focus strength. So how to train students with a guessing skill? We need to pay attention to these three figures. First of all, we need to focus on the linguistic clue. Second of all, we also need to focus on the clue from the wider context, like in the conjunction relationship, the common sense, or even the background knowledge. And last but not least, we need to be aware of that guessing depends on good listening and reading. So that means that training guessing skill will need to be a part of the general development of these skills. Right. The second strategy is to learn from word card and using word card. Learning from word mean that we learn the vocabulary from the small card that made by the learner, and these are some simple mnemonic strategy for such learning, but the most well-researched strategy is keyword technique. The keyword technique means that we link the full word to its meaning. Okay, so how about the word part, using word part? Basically, we have two steps for this. We analyze into the smaller part, and then we will relate the meaning of the smaller part into the word, into the meaning of the whole word. Complex, but let me introduce one example. The word apposition here. The first step, we will analyze into the smaller part. Ap, like in the form of at mean next to, pose mean to place, and then position is the signal of a noun. So now we come to the second step. We relate the smaller part into the meaning of the whole word. The word apposition would be a noun to meaning that is occurring alongside each other when we relate the meaning of the smaller part. And last one is to use dictionary. Dictionary can be used receptively to support reading and listening, but it also can be used productively to support writing and speaking as well. Many learners do not know how to use dictionary effectively, so training is a must. Using dictionary involves reading, like phonemic transcription, interpreting grammatical information, and it can be used as a learning tool as well. All right, so we move on to how to assess vocabulary knowledge. They have many purposes. We can use to measure vocabulary size, or just what just have been learned, like a short-term achievement test, or to measure what have been learned in a course, a long-term achievements, or to diagnose the areas of strength and weaknesses. So I would like to introduce the 5 most popular tests when it comes to the vocabulary. Those are the vocabulary level test, the reductive levels test, yes-no checklist test, vocabulary dictation test, and the last one, vocabulary size test. So what are they? First of all, is the vocabulary level test. Here is an example of the vocabulary level test. We use a matching format where the examinee write the number of the answer in the blank. They have 5 sections that cover the most frequency level, so the result have teacher to decide what vocabulary level learner should be working on. The second kind of test is a productive level test. Here, another example. The productive level test requires learner to recall the form of the word by using the sentence cue. As you can see here, the first few letters will be provided so that the test taker will not choose the synonym of that word. And this test is useful to showing whether the learner knowledge of the words has begun to move toward the productive mastery. Third one, the yes-no checklist test. This test uses a yes-no format where the learner will see a word on the computer screen and decide if they know it or not. And of course, in the test, there would be some pseudo word, like a fake word that look like a real, like this word, scamp. It's not a real word. And every time the learner said that they use these non-words, the score will be adjusted downward. Next one, we got the vocabulary dictation test. This test consists of 5 paragraphs containing the less frequent vocabulary, and they're administered like a dictation, but only 20 target words of each level are actually marked. There are 4 versions of this test, and they are used when it comes to dictation. We will think that they will use for to test learner listening vocabulary. And last one, the vocabulary size test. It is designed as a proficiency test to measure the total vocabulary size. They have 140 multiple choice items containing in the non-defining context sentence, like in this. You can see in this test, the sentence does not include any context, and they're to discourage the test taker from guessing the answer. So I would like to mention about some limitation on generalizing the vocabulary side. So we see that most of the research on the vocabulary has been done in the context of English. So this means that some findings reported earlier in this chapter may not be generalizable in other language. Let me get an example. So I have English and Arabic here. I got 4 words in English and 4 words that is translated from English to Arabic. These 4 words, book, write, letter, sprite, they are semantically related to the written language. But you only know that this relationship when you know these 4 items, right? So there is no physical signal to announce the relationship. But what about in the Arabic? These 4 words, you can see that they share the set of consonants, k, t, b, that they signal that in the semantic way, even though you don't know all these 4 meanings, but they have some relation, physical relation. These are the timeline of how English, developed. First of all, the English was developed as a Anglo-Saxon in the original, and then in 1066, the Norman invasion on English, and then they introduced some French word, the Norman French word. Later on the 18th century, some scholars tried to introduce some Latin and Greek word. As you can see in the table here, the first column are some words are some animal that you can find on the field. They are Anglo-Saxon. The second column are the Norman French, and you can see these words on, like to describe a feast. But the third column here, you only see them, in the technology word or book, like technical term, although they share meaning. That is one of the first, one of the first characteristics that I want to introduce. From the table that you kept seeing, you recognize that English vocabulary consists of a large number of items, and they have many layers. Like another example for you, we got eyes, ears, and back, and we also have ocular, auricular, lumbar, which is exactly meaning of eyes, ears, and back. So some of these words only appear when in a conversation with the patient, but other words like auricular, lumbar only occurred in the written report with the doctor. The second I want to mention is the vocabulary size in the language proficiency. So usually we would think that the proficiency, the ability to use language would come along with the size of vocabulary that you have. And as far as I remember, Carnation claimed that if you want to gain a proficiency in a certain language like English, you need to have like 4,000 to 6,000 items of vocabulary. But what about in the other languages? In other languages, the basic number item is smaller. but there's more of a system inventing new words. In these languages, having a large vocabulary may be less important than having understand the process of word formation and having an ability to process these effectively. Right. How do I say so? Let me get an example. I got 3 words here. Does anyone know any words here? The meaning? We got plagiarism, wrestling, and hijacking. I think one of them is very common to us. Anyone?
Plagiarism means đạo văn.
Yeah, when you're stealing someone's written, right? Okay. Yeah. The second one, thank you, Ms. Queen. Wrestling means you're stealing someone's cows or horse, and hijacking means you're stealing someone's plane, right? So, as I mentioned before, English have so many layers. So why don't we just say stealing someone's work, stealing someone's horse or plane? That because English have the tendency to use a rare and unusual word that other languages often just view similar item. Yeah, so that is some of the limitation that we cannot, generalize the vocabulary in when we come to another language. Here are some hands-on activity, but because of the time, I would like you to read on the textbook page 52 and 53. If you have any question, just ask me about that. And here's a reference of our presentation. Thank you for listening.